Hi, and welcome to the latest edition of the Leadership Untitled podcast with me, Rob Moores. The show where we hope to help leaders, whether you're first-line leaders or senior leaders, with lots of hints and tips and stories around leadership that can help you in your daily work and life. I'm joined usually by industry experts or scholars or authors or sports personalities, you name it, to provide those hints and tips, and today is no exception. My guest today is Dave Ulrich. Now, you've probably heard of Dave Ulrich. He's commonly known as the father of modern HR, but also the number of books he has written on HR, organisational development and leadership, including the Leadership Code, are in their tens if not hundreds now. He is an absolute expert and real thought leader in all of these fields, and this is a great conversation to really begin to understand the role of a leader now, but also what is needed for the future, especially in the turbulent world in which we're now part of. So please join me in welcoming Dave to the podcast. So hi Dave, and welcome to the Leadership Untitled podcast. How are you today?
Rob, what a privilege to join you and feel your energy and enthusiasm and your passion for topics that have a positive impact on the world we live in.
Oh, absolutely. And Dave, I think, I mentioned it just in our little preamble that we're having together there, that as someone who's done a CIPD course over recent history, I don't think there was many modules or even many webinars where your name didn't pop up somewhere along the line when it came to leadership and in HR. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Well, it's a delight to be here, and I hope the name was not always in vain. So hope there were some good things.
That was always a good thing. It was always a good thing. And I think what one of the reasons, or the main reason I was so eager to get you on the show, is not just about all the sort of thinking and books you've written and the thought leadership you provided over the decades. It's, we're in a crux of a moment in the world where things have changed over the last 3 years. And I think leadership has become more important than ever in every angle, from self-leadership through to the heads of organizations. And I think the role of HR and L&D in helping that is again more important than it ever was. So I guess, from I'll kind of go back just as a starting point. What really did first get you interested all those years ago in looking at leadership and HR? What was the motivation for you?
Oh, it's fun to go back and talk about history, and I won't bore our listeners with that too much. But I was on my way to law school decades ago, and somebody said, take this course in OB, or back then, organizational behavior. I had a remarkable professor who still is a mentor today, who basically said, I don't have anything required, no text, no books. Go look at the organizations where you live, where you work, where you play, where you worship, and figure out how they shape your life. Mm-hmm. And then write a paper and tell me what you learned. So I'd go to a movie and I'd write a paper about the organization. I was getting a degree in English, so I'd read Shakespeare and write about King Lear and the source of power and how he used power in his organization. Or Paradise Lost, Chapter 2, and how Beelzebub created power. And I ended up writing a 10 to 15 page paper every week for 15 weeks. And the professor called me and he said, you're weird. Nobody writes 10-page papers every week. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to law school. And he said, don't do that. Take another course. So I took another course. And remember calling my parents back then and said, I'm not going to go to law school. I'm going to study OB. And they said, oh, my goodness, our son's going to be a doctor, obstetrics. And I said, no, it's called organizational behavior. And I remember my parents saying, what is that? And I said, I have no clue, but I'm captivated. Now I'm going to move forward really quickly because that's boring. But my wife, who's a very, very good psychologist, said, you have OCD. And I said, what's that? She said, organization compulsive disorder. You compulsively reorganize organizations. And I do that to this day, Rob. I was out to dinner yesterday with my mom and my wife, and I said to my wife, I think I could improve the productivity of this restaurant 5% if they did a couple of things. And she said, Dave, calm down. You don't need to do that. The restaurant's okay. Let's move on. So that's the background, Rob. I like to look at organizations. I mean, look at where you've worked at Sky TV and elsewhere, the companies where you visit, where you play, where you do your hobbies, your sports, where you worship, those organizations shape who you are. And can they do things more effectively? That's the world in which I love to live and play.
Absolutely. And something I love there about what you said is it actually links in today in the UK is A-level results day. For A-level students, sixth form students. Yep. So that bit around where you kind of get why do you want to do that? And why do you want to do this course? And you went, I don't know what it is, but I'm intrigued by it. It makes me curious. There's a great lesson there sometimes that, if you don't exactly know what you want to do stuff that really interests you and makes you curious.
There was a colleague I've met recently who said, I was doing L&D work, and then I fell into coaching. And I just started to love coaching people and working with people and seeing how their individual skills would have time 1, time 2, time 3 sequential effect on many people. And that colleague is now spending a lot of his time doing coaching and podcasts.
Fantastic. It almost sounds like me.
That is you. That is you. That's why I said it. I mean, the same thing, find your passion. And now the good news is we're blessed that some of our passion also has impact on others. It helps others and allows us to have a wonderful career in life.
Absolutely. I mean, I did a degree in history, and then I did a master's in IT, and then I ended up in L&D, and then I love coaching. So it's like broad and wild and wacky as you like.
Yeah.
I guess then Dave, is that, the ultimate question that floats around at the minute on the back of what has been an interesting, to say the least, last 2.5, 3 years or so, is the challenges that leaders face going forward over the next coming years. There's lots of things that float around now with things like hybrid working as a term, also the great resignation. I think we should sort of tip our hat to something like the great reevaluation. I think that's what people are reconsidering now, what is important to them. And all that, whilst it's a great topic to discuss from a worker's side, also provides challenges to first-line leaders and senior leaders within established organizations. So I guess, from your work and your experience, what are the challenges you're seeing at the moment for leadership?
Well, let's start, Rob, where you've now mentioned it twice brilliantly. And it's not my line. I'm not sure who said it. Context is the kingdom. It's the setting in which we live and work. Content is the king or the queen. It's the action. The context has changed the last 2 years. Now, it's not changed dramatically. We've always had change. But the context with COVID, with physical disability, with technology, distancing and connecting simultaneously, with the emotional challenges everyone I know is facing, including myself, emotional challenges that come with that, with technology, with uncertainty in the world. Who could have predicted the Ukraine crisis? Who could predict the issues, political toxicity? I think even in the UK, once in a while, there's some political upheaval, as there is in every country. The government now, well, what does all that mean? What's that context? What I'm seeing is that in that context, the content that organizations and leaders and people are worried about is what I'm going to call human capability. I like the term human capability. Human is the individual. That's the person. What do you do to take care of your people? Employee experience, resignation, managing meaning, purpose, all that. Capability is the organization. It's the team. It's the system. So you've got to manage both the people, the human, and the capability. The intersection of that is leadership. What is a leader's job? A leader's job is to make sure that our people are cared for in ways that are meaningful to them, and that our organization puts the collective benefits of people together to be successful. And so I think we're seeing great attention to human capability. You see conferences like Davos. Culture, that's part of the capability. Speed, agility, that's part of the capability. Well-being, that's part of the human. Leadership. I think those issues are getting attention. The government is mandated in the United States, and it's going to be globally with Public Securities Exchange Commission, human capital. Investors are starting to pay attention to this. And it's becoming an issue for both the individuals, the human, and the capability that investors and customers and communities are paying attention to. So I'm seeing human capability as perhaps the issue around environment, social governance. Well, social and governance is human capability. And that's the stuff that we're trying to manage in a more effective way.
Absolutely. I think this emphasis, what I see is as well that more people are actually interested in the subject of leadership.
Yep.
Because of the virtue of this. And you mentioned UK politics there. I think, going back a decade, maybe just even one decade, if the prime minister wasn't that great in people's eyes, they would just say they're not a great prime minister, or what a pain they are, or other words I won't use on the podcast. Whereas I've seen over the last couple of years, people now refer to leadership a lot more. Is this person a great leader? What are they showing in terms of skills of a leader? What would make a great leader of this country? That word seems to come out of a lot more people's mouths now.
Rob, we could do it right now. Somebody could do it if they're listening. Google the word leader or leadership. I think you're going to get not hundreds, not thousands, not millions, but billions of responses. Yeah. And there's more than ever. I mean, intuitively, we all know. I just talked about a mentor I had 40 years ago who was a leader for me and still is. A parent who leads their children, a minister who leads his or her congregation. I mean, we all intuitively know leaders matter and leadership matters. So what does it mean to be effective? And I think in the world of transparency, helping leaders lead better becomes ever more critical in the things that we do. And that's one of the things we've tried to get our arms around. I love research. My professor got me into a PhD and got me into studying statistics and taxonomy and simplicity and research. We studied leadership. What does it mean to be an effective leader? So that those I lead are effective. And the beginning assumption is that leadership is not about what you know and do. Leadership is how what you know and do helps others do what they do better. That the value of leadership is not the leader, it's somebody else. And I remember my mentor, I think about him periodically, kept teaching me, Dave, value is not what you know, it's what others get because of what you know. And there's a value of your values. How will leaders help others be more effective? That's what coaching's about. Coaching is not about, I'm going to tell you how great I am or how good you are, but I'm going to help you develop skills around listening, around engaging others, around setting strategy, around getting things done, so that those you lead become more effective. One of my favorite tests of leadership right now, and I love simple tests. I love data, statistics, complexity, but I love simplicity. How often does somebody leave an interaction with you feeling better or worse about themselves? It's a very simple leadership test. And when I do coaching, and I know you do coaching, I'd love some of you shared your tips on this podcast and others. But one of my tips is when I interview people to do a 360 to coach somebody, how often when you leave an interaction with that person, the person you're coaching, do you feel better or worse about yourself and why? And then when I work with a leader, what do people say? Are they leaving an interaction with you feeling good or bad, better or worse? And by the way, it's easy when it's all good news, Mary Poppins, let's sing and let's chant. But when it's tough news, can you still deliver a tough message and people feel better about themselves? That for me is what leadership is all about. It's about the value you have that creates value. It's the values you have that create value in others.
Absolutely. There's that piece at the start of a conversation where, as a leader, you really need to ask how it is you can help that person.
Yeah.
Rather than just going in to tell them a bunch of stuff that you want them to do. How can I help you? And then bookend that at the end with, has that helped? Is there anything else I can do to help you? And there's more chance then of what you're talking about actually happening.
Absolutely. The only thing I'd add is, can I help you see the potential in you that I see in you? Let me give an example. I'm coaching a leader, brilliant leader, senior leader, big company, won't name the company, global company. And an employee makes an egregious mistake, big mistake. This company, because they're global, they'd be better off to do it in person and they'd be better off to do it by Zoom, but they use email a lot. You can argue that. That's not the debate.
Yeah.
So I coached this leader and I said, before you send out your email, let me know. And so this was email. You made a huge mistake. It's going to cost us an enormous amount of money. If you don't change, you're likely to be fired. And I said, time out. By the way, I can see Rob, if you guys are watching in video or a podcast, his eyes light up. Don't send it.
No.
Don't send it. So I said to him, may I change 3 things? Really simple. And he said, what would you change? Number 1, I care about you. Number 2, you have great potential at this company. That's the piece I'd add. You made a big mistake. It's going to cost us millions of dollars. Do not run away from the mistake. And then number 3, let's work together to help you be successful. So not a fear of firing, a positive, let's be together. So notice in that comment, you want the employee to leave feeling better about themselves, but you cannot walk away from the accountability. I care about you. You have potential. You made a mistake and it's going to cost us money. What can we learn so that you can improve? And that logic for me is what good leaders do, even in tough situations. It sounds like it's magic and it's hard. It's not that hard, but it's getting that headset that my job as a leader is to help you be better as a leader. By the way, there's a simple story. Imagine, and you can figure out who this is if you want to play it out, somebody who's a billionaire. And he says, I am a great leader because I'm a billionaire. My comment to that leader would be, how many millionaires did you create? How many millionaires did you create? The fact that you're a billionaire is credible. Congratulations. I mean, I'm not going to run away. But did you create millionaires so that they can succeed you? Anyway, that's the mindset for me of going from being a leader to creating leadership in others.
Absolutely. I've got a close friend of mine who's actually been a guest on this podcast called Chris Williams. He was the leadership development guy who kind of initially got me involved in coaching and leadership all those years ago. And I often ask him, you're not very vocal on social media. You don't put yourself out there. You'd be great at it. And backing up what you've said, he says, I've no aspirations of becoming the king. I'm the king maker. And absolutely, that's what drives him every single day to do it. And some of the stuff you've talked about there as well made me just think of, there's a lot of the old Stockdale paradox in what you've said there. We mustn't walk away from the gravity of the situation. That needs to come across as a leader. And the trust piece is massive there, that if you work out this muscle of talking to people as a human, of being interested, genuinely interested in them and helping them and making sure that you are adding value to them, then when that more challenging message does come along, there's a lot more trust in it that you're delivering it with the right reasons.
Well, and this gets in a little bit. I know you mentioned that I've done work in HR. Sometimes leaders go to HR and say, oh, I've got an employee in trouble. Would you have the conversation? A good HR person would say, I can't. Because if I have the conversation, not that I can't physically do it or socially do it, but if I have the conversation, it will undermine you as a leader. Because your leadership is going to the employee. By the way, I bet you have people, and it could be Chris or it could be somebody else, who were your coach, your mentor, who had those tough conversations. The mentor I mentioned, decades later, I still meet once in a while, and he always says to me, Dave, are you doing things that help the world? Out of love, as you said, out of concern. But I hope we can help leaders have those difficult conversations in ways that help other people get better. And that's what leadership is. Now, HR, what would you say then to a leader? Here's an employee who needs to be reprimanded or improved or feedback, whatever you want to call it. The HR person says, I could do it. That would not help you. Let me coach you. Let's role play. Let's practice. What words can you use? What's going to happen if? Let me spend 10 to 15 minutes helping you, the leader, have the conversation, because then you will get the respect of the employee who's getting the suggestion, and they will leave an interaction with you feeling better about themselves, even if it's tough news. So I think that's the HR role, is to be the, you call it power behind the scenes or pulling the strings. I can't remember the exact metaphor Chris used, but the kingmaker. I love that metaphor. I mean, it's the Wizard of Oz. It's the person behind the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that HR piece, I think, is crucial. I think so many organizations have fallen into the trap over the years of almost abdicating responsibility for the people to HR because it had the word human in it. And then to make it even more confounded, it was we've changed the name to people services or people divisions or whatever it might be with the chief people officer. So you must be the ones that go out there and have the conversations. You're there to support me as a leader when I need you. And it's kind of like, no. Let's strip that back. The responsibility for the people lies with the leaders of those people, as a parent and a child would be.
Great point. I mean, can you imagine a parent saying, well, and we've all probably done it as parents, when your mom gets home from work, she's going to tell you, no, if my child does something wrong, I need to do it before my wife gets home from work. Or and I had you'll maybe get a kick out of this. When I was teaching MBA students at the university, my favorite final exam multiple choice question was, who has primary accountability and responsibility? Who has primary accountability and responsibility for the human capability, leadership, talent, issues within a company? 1, line manager. 2, head of HR. 3, it's shared. 4, the consultant, which I loved. 5, I don't care, I'm going into finance. And almost everybody marked 3, it's shared. And I marked it wrong. Who has primary accountability? Number 1, the business leader, the line manager. He or she, as you said so eloquently, they're accountable. By the way, they're also accountable. You got a degree in IT. They're accountable for IT. They're accountable for finance. Our job in HR is to be their partner, their coach, their architect, their facilitator, and then to help them live up to their opportunities. And that's what makes me excited. I mean, HR is a great partner in this place. They're part of the business. We've been talking about that for decades. And we're seeing that begin to happen more and more around human capability.
But it's going to the extremes of that. It's so often the business partnering model I've always loved, and I've played that role as L&D business partner. So often what I see is that's almost misunderstood in the sense that that's the only person, therefore, that will get to know the business. That's the only person that will create those contacts and build those relationships, but primarily just to understand so they can recommend. Whereas this is about how can we actually then, so as a HR business partner, I often use the analogy of pharmacist versus GP. Okay. And kind of say, rather than kind of picking something off the shelf and going, there you go, as a chemist, as a pharmacist, that's what you need. It might be that me as the business partner, I'm not the expert in this, what you need. I've identified something, but it's actually a learning thing. It's actually something we can pass to the L&D team, or it's support you need from the quality team or the IT team. But I'm partnering with you in a way that I can help you identify the support you need and where to get it.
I love the metaphor, and it's a great GP example. I go to my general practitioner doctor. I don't assume that he or she will know everything about all of my health conditions. By the way, I could give you a list right now and you go, oh my gosh. But what I do know, or I hope I know, is that they're smart enough to refer me to those who do know. And sometimes I think the HR generalist, whatever you call that person in the field, they're part of the business team. They've been at the table for 20 years. I still see people saying, we should get HR people to the table. And some of my line is, if they're not at the table now, they may never get there because the table is set. They got to be there. I hope they're smart enough to say, where do I go? Do I go to L&D? There is a knowledge and body of work around learning and development and how do you help people change and how do you help people grow? Do I go to the compensation expert? There is a body of knowledge around compensation and rewards. Do I go to the staffing expert? Do I go to the OD expert around change, communications expert? And I think as you said it so well, the business partner says, I will bring you resources, people, knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that will help your company, our company, be successful in the marketplace. What a great opportunity. And that is a little bit the kingmaker. That's Chris Williams's metaphor. We'll honor Chris. We have to say his name 5 times.
That's it. I've got to put him in the notes now as well. I don't think I own royalties though.
Well, what you should say, you'll share all royalties with him. When they're 0 divided by 10, they're the same. But anyway, I think that's the beauty of HR is we actually come. And let me go back to the concept that I find really helpful. I introduced the concept in the world we live in today, content is human capability. When I work with business or HR leaders, I say human capability asks three questions. Given what we're trying to do to succeed in the marketplace with customers, investors, through products or services or strategies, there's three things we need to do in human capability. One, have the right people. Competence, commitment, ability, the right people. Two, the right team. That's organization, that's capability. And three, the right leadership. If you're an HR professional listening in, and you're level 7 or trying to be level 7 at CIPD, which is a great certification, you should be able to answer that question. Do we have the right people, the right organization, and the right leadership? If you're a business leader and you're listening in, turn to your HR people. What should we do to get the right people, talent, individual, competence, whatever you want to call people, individuals, the right organization, team, systems, culture, and the right leadership? When we deliver those three elements called human capability, our company will be much more successful at delivering strategy, at serving customers, at building investor confidence in our future, and at creating community reputation. We'll succeed. And that's the agenda. For business leaders, for HR leaders, when we can make that happen, we succeed. Final caveat on all that. One of the lines I love to use, and I could say HR or L&D, because I think we have listeners on both sides. HR is not about HR. L&D is not about L&D. L&D and HR are about success in the marketplace. Unless and until we create an organization that succeeds in the marketplace, there is no workplace. Sometimes I get HR folks very enamored. It's all about the employee experience. When that movement came out about 2 or 3 years ago, I looked at some of the early articles and books. Employee experience, by the way, that's an evolution of great work on motivation and satisfaction and engagement and commitment. It's a great evolution. And the early books in that space had, well, it would be fun to ask you, well, I've already given it away. What percent of those articles or books talked about customers, investors, marketplace? The early books were less than 5%. Today, we're seeing that you create an employee experience through leadership so that our customers buy our product. Otherwise, we don't have a firm. So that our investors have confidence in our future. So that the community gives us a reputation. And when we create a connection, and this is lecture 23, this is horrible. When we create a connection between the internal leadership and employee and culture to the external customer and investor, it's a virtual spiral. And it builds on itself, and we have longer term success.
I think, tying that into what you started that with was that seat at the table. Are you in that seat at the table as HR in a way that you're just giving updates on the employee experience, or are you in there tying it in to how that actually generates and contributes towards the results that we care about? I often describe it as it's almost like a Dragon's Den moment of, well, the CEO is sitting there. How are you going to convince the CEO, using the CEO's language and the things that the CEO cares about, that the things you're working on are going to have an impact on those things?
I love it, Rob. And I'll give a quick example. We teach a course in the United States at the University of Michigan on HR, 2-week advanced HR course, and they leave with a plan. One of the recent courses, a participant said, here's my plan for diversity, because that's a hot topic today. Here's my plan for hybrid organization. Here's my plan for resignation, avoiding resignation. I'm going to go back and present this. And I said, you have failed the course. And they said, what? That's, resignation, hybrid, diversity. Those are the topics du jour. Don't go there. Start with, what does it take for this business to succeed in the marketplace? Is it low cost? Is it product innovation? Is it customer centricity? Is it technology? And what are the indicators of success? Intangible market value, lower cost of capital, customer share of targeted customers. When you go into a business meeting, don't start with diversity or hybrid or resignation. Start with the business. And then, now here's my simple tip. Once you know the business, we're trying to change our strategy from being a product strategy to a customer strategy. Got it. We don't want to sell product. We want to build customer relationships. Got it. Here's the 2 words: because of. Because of diversity, because of hybrid, because of maintaining talent, or start with diversity, hybrid, and resignation so that I'm here to build a diversity strategy so that we can move our business strategy from product to customer centricity, so that we can become more global in Africa, so that we can build a better innovation pipeline of products. The so that and because of build a connection between what we do in human capability, talent, organization, and leadership, and what the business requires from their stakeholders. Again, I find that such a simple metaphor. And for leadership, I don't want to just build a set of attributes. You know, I set a strategy, I get things done, I hold people accountable, I listen to people, so that. What's the outcome with the employee, with the customer, with the investor, with the community? That's the connection, Rob, that I get intrigued with and enjoy. So do you, obviously.
Oh, obviously. I think it's, you know, that sings to me the word alignment. And that I often see, and even to a granular level, the goals that teams, not just HR and L&D teams, but all teams set themselves are goals that are self-serving. I'm going to create this or populate this system or create this learning or this module or whatever it might be. And if you kind of really start loving those, so that, because of, tying that in. And if you're struggling to answer that question, if you're struggling to put anything on the back of it other than, so I complete my goal, then what's the reason we're doing it? And this is that vision piece. This is where I think so many organizations and people in organizations have got talk about values on a wall that mean nothing. Talk about vision statements that they have to look up on the internet to actually remember, to kind of go, okay, well, the goals that you're setting, the people that you're hiring, the diversity programs that you're generating and creating, all of these things, how is that helping us as a company, assuming we've done that groundwork you've talked about of making sure we know what our targets are and our value, our vision is, and our mission is? How is it helping that? How is it contributing to that?
Nice. And that's the so that. And if what we do doesn't help us succeed in the marketplace with customers, with investors, with communities, that's the marketplace outside. That's the contact that we started with. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because we can't afford frivolous work. We have to do work, and it does connect. That's the beauty. We can see that connection in a remarkable way. For example, the employee attitude is highly correlated with customer attitude. If you're a company doing employee engagement, however you measure employee sentiment, retention, productivity, retention of the right people, et cetera, moving out the wrong people, whatever you do, engagement scores, if you've got those scores, correlate them with customer scores. What we find generally is a 0.6 to 0.8 correlation. There's a relationship, and if I want to get that customer satisfaction higher, whatever you call that, a net promoter score, whatever you want to call customer engagement, so they buy the product, I've got to lead that with the employee and get that data. And if I'm in L&D, L&D is not about a training program. Those of us who've been in training a long time remember how many people got 40 hours of training. Well, the logical question is, was it any good? What did you do? I mean, you could have had 40 hours of basket weaving. I mean, the goal is do training so that the company succeeds in the marketplace. What does that mean? If I'm in L&D, invite my best customers in to co-design the training program. If I've got an L&D training program, invite the customers in to say, what do you need to see in our products and services that will cause you to buy our product? Invite customers and investors to come in as participants. We've worked in companies that they say, we're going to do leadership training. 10 to 20% of every leadership training course is outside players, customers, investors, community leaders. Invite customers and investors in to present. One company I worked with a few years ago, they had a 5-day leadership program, not uncommon. On Wednesday afternoon, they did a social activity, golf, some social thing to bond, which is terrific. And we all love bonding. I said, let me offer another option. Maybe on Wednesday afternoon, for the 50 executives in the room, you bring in a panel of 4 customers, all of whom have quit doing business with you in the last year. So this is not a trivial group. And you let them tell you why. And the goal is not to get them back right now. The goal is for you to learn. They said, ooh, that's kind of risky. Some people may feel bad because they're the leaders in the room who lost that account. Good. We're not here to hurt them, but we're going to learn. We're going to run into that issue. They did it. It was one of the most profound discussions they've ever had, because those customers said, we're not coming back right now. That's not the agenda. But here's what you did not do. Was it price? Was it quality? Was it features that would have helped us maintain? You moved your salesperson that I had a 20-year relationship with to another job. I didn't know who to work with. Great. They left. We then had a conversation. What can we do around human capability, talent, leadership, and organization so that future customers don't have that experience?
Yep.
That's L&D from the outside in. And I hope our L&D colleagues who are listening, we're not just running programs. We're running programs so that customers, investors, community leaders will have a better experience. If you're an L&D person, I'll shut up. If you're an L&D, I get excited about this.
Oh, good. It's good to get excited about it.
I have that OCD, organizational compulsion. If I were an L&D person listening, here's a very simple question. Who are your company's biggest investors? Who's got stock in your company or debt in your company? Mm-hmm. Who are the analysts who follow your company and your industry? Have you figured out what they're looking for to make you a buy if they're an analyst, to give you a premium in intangible value if they're an investor, to reduce the cost of capital if they give you debt? Are you in L&D building programs that will give them more confidence in your future?
Absolutely.
By the way, that's a fascinating rhetorical question. But some of L&D, we love case studies. Let's learn what Unilever did to be successful. That's really cool if you work at Unilever. Yeah. But if I'm an investor, and by the way, I love Unilever. If I'm an investor, I want to know, what should your company do to be more successful? Yeah. I don't want to look at case studies from other companies. I want to see, what are you in L&D doing so that the leaders who are getting developed have the skills to meet my needs, to give me confidence in the future. That's what we call outside in, a very simple lens to begin to rethink L&D value.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Those are the people. It might be that moment of discomfort that you've talked about there, but that is learning. And I think, that's the big thing. I think, lots of teams have changed their names from training teams to learning teams or learning and development teams, but quite often largely still work as training functions. Yeah. But how can we, the bottom line is that people are always learning, whether it's the back doors to processes, whether it's bad habits, whatever it might be. How do we guide that? And by bringing those in, I mean, I looked at as a customer point of view, I shared this on social media the other day. I went into a KFC. Now, kind of odd to bring a KFC story in, but I kind of go, well, I don't walked into KFC. I saw the self-service screens, and they're all lovely design, nice and intuitive, big pictures, touch screen. I cannot go wrong in that buying process. It's pretty damn simple. Yeah. Then, though, my friend went to the guy on the counter who was being trained. And he's been trained up by a supervisor. So instantly, and I guess this is where me and you might be similar, Dave, is that I really shouldn't be thinking about this stuff while I'm having KFC on a break. But anyway, I still was. And I'm going, all right, there's
my wife does therapy for OCD people. So
brilliant. Put me on.
Keep going. I want to hear the rest of the story. It's a great story.
But I could see just over the shoulder of my friend and the screen that this new starter, who was visibly terrified of what he was trying to do and what being asked to do, and it looked like something that was created on a Sinclair Spectrum in the 1980s. And I'm going, right, at which point, who in this organization is going, what's a good idea for our customers there is to make this really simple and intuitive, painless, and easy to get from point A to point B. However, for our employees, we're not going to create that same level of simplicity. Now, with KFC, it's kind of obvious, and all of the restaurants that kind of work in that way, because KFC, by the way, are not the only ones I've seen this in. It's kind of obvious how that then might impact on the customer. Because Absolutely. It's really difficult, this system. Therefore, it's taking me too long to serve you and get through it. When you're not face-to-face with a customer, people don't see that as clearly, but it's still absolutely true. And then falls into that engagement you talk about, our people going, well, you know what? I don't like the systems, and I think it's overly complicated. And just like a customer would, I might leave.
And by the way, when those employees leave, I just saw some stuff today actually on LinkedIn. The cost of turnover is high, not just replacing the employee, but the erosion of customer value. That when those employees churn at the KFC, the new employees never get up to speed. Remember that correlation, 0.6 to 0.8 between employee engagement and customer engagement, the employee customer. What matters most is not the employees at KFC headquarters. It's the employee you see in the restaurant. And when you can do that frontline employee face-to-face engagement, he or she will connect with the customer. One of the things we did in some work at quick service restaurants, it happened to be McDonald's, same issue as KFC. They said, we want our employees to be friendly. Well, what does that mean? I smile at the customer when they come in. By the way, it's scary when they smile and say, Rob, it's great to see you. I've seen you 4 days out of 5. That's probably a problem. But and then I said, you've missed it. You've missed it. It's not that that employee smiles at you. It's that the customer smiles back. Remember, value is not what you do. It's what the customer gets from what you do. Value is not what the leader does. It's what the employee gets because of the leader they work with. And so McDonald's started doing a tracking. How often did customers smile back?
Right.
You know, we want you to leave as a customer feeling better about yourself. So it isn't, oh, I smiled at you and said your name. That's kind of the traditional internal focus, behavioral focus of a culture. The real value is the customer smiled back and left feeling better about themselves. I see on your shelf Disney, and people may see this video or they may see a podcast. Disney is so good at that. They empower their employees to give customers or guests a great experience. And you know, whatever they have to do, there's legions of stories about Disney employees on the front line. Somebody left a toy in a Disney hotel. The maid got a hold of that customer and sent it back to him. I mean, you know, the housekeeper, maid is a bad word. I apologize. But it's that empowerment. We want guests to have a better experience. L&D. I hope you can do things in L&D with customers, investors, communities. Focus on their value because of your program. And then have them teach, have them present what we talked about. Attend in teams, not as individuals. We love the idea that we've been using lately, Rob, is don't do presentations in L&D, don't do facilitated learning, don't do case studies, don't even do action learning. Do learning solutions. Say to the customer, what's the biggest problem you're having as you interface with us? Good, here it is. We're going to now in the L&D program create a solution to that problem. A long time ago, I was doing some work with a U.S. firm called Sears. They sell white good, washing machines, appliances. GE is one of the major suppliers at the time. And they said, we're having trouble with some of our product features. Let's get a team together in L&D and solve it. And my comment to the folks at the time was, let's invite Sears in to the L&D program. And their first thought was, oh my gosh, we're going to open the kimono. We're going to show that we have problems in our supply chain. And I said, what's happening to your market share? It's dropping. Well, they know you've got problems. What they want to know is that you're willing to try to fix them in a way that works for them. And so that's the plea. Action learning is great, but learning solutions. What's the problems of success in the marketplace that we as an L&D team can begin to help you solve? And the same thing with leadership. The book we've written on leadership, we've written a lot of books on leadership, and we always love your last child. Actually, you love all your children, but we call it a leadership brand. For example, somebody says, what makes an effective leader? And I've sometimes been called in, as have you in your consulting, and I hope they call you in. I say, let's look at leadership brand. Before I come meet with you, send me your marketing campaign. This isn't about marketing. Yeah, it is. What's your social media advertisement? What's your print media? What's your television? What do you put on Sky TV? What's the message you're communicating to the marketplace? They said, why do you want that? I said, I'm going to take that message and match it against what you're training your leaders. If you're promising the marketplace speed and you're training your leaders to be low cost, there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
We should be building leadership against the criteria, against the standards or promises we make, the brand. We call it leadership brand. What are we promising the marketplace? That expectation should shape what we do in our training programs. Absolutely. By the way, that's such an obvious thing. And so I go to the L&D people. Where did you, here's a program. It's great. What are the three things you're teaching? Change. That's good. Speed. That's good. Well, you had great resignation, employee experience. Super. Where'd you come up with those? Well, we did a competence model. 10 successful leaders, 10 unsuccessful. Are those the things that customers will buy your product on? Wow, we never thought about that. Are those the things your marketing campaign is built on?
Yeah.
That's for me what gets me so excited. So excited.
I worked with the client last year who we were talking about very similar thing, really, that I've had an experience with a company where I was an employee and their leadership standards were very much bought in from a list from a consultancy firm on what great leadership competencies were. And as a result, no one really connected to them because what does that mean? We all know that they're great traits. Whereas with the client I was working with, I was kind of going, okay, well, what's the vision and mission of the organization for the next couple of years? And going back to your so that and because of, what is required of leadership within this organization to deliver that? And don't do it.
I would go one step further. I would go one step further. You've got leadership skills, mission and vision. I'd go customer brand promise. Because our mission and vision should be consistent with the promise we make our customers.
100%.
By the way, we did a fun thing. You would appreciate this because I get a sense of your quirkiness. No offense, I'm quirky. We were teaching a course at the university and we had 25 or 30 people. Send in your leadership competence model. Everybody's got them. We did study top companies for leadership. They've all got them. Put them on the wall without the name of your company. Number one, can you name the company?
Yeah.
No. Number two, can you name the consulting firm who created the model? Yes. We were more able to pick the consulting firm. Some were in a wheel. That's a joke, but it's true. Yeah, we were more able to name the consulting firm than the firm, which says that generics don't differentiate. You don't compete by doing generics. And I'm afraid that in some of the L&D stuff, learning and development, and we call it leadership and development, we're doing generics, not differentiated work. And so I love where you went, mission and vision. I would go one step further. Customer, investor, L&D. Have you listened to the last investor call? When we did an investor call with either debt or equity, we could be borrowing money or we could be getting stock price. What did we promise investors? Why did they invest in our company? Now work my way back. That's part of our mission and vision, I hope. That's alignment you talked about.
Yeah.
Now, what am I going to train on Tuesday morning that if one of those investors sat in, they'd go, wow, I'm going to give this company a little premium.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the logic, Rob. I get excited about that. I can tell you do too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that end point. Okay. Start with that end in mind. That if we're there in 2 years' time and our investors, our customers, everyone has got a sense of kind of belonging to the company, but also a sense of loyalty and success with the company, then what does that mean our leaders have had to do over those 2 years to get us to that point? What have they enabled in their people and their teams? How have they connected what those teams do to that customer vision and that statement and all those great things, making it really clear? But I think, I'm a great proponent as well on how do we get people to feel connected to that? Not just kind of go, let's tell our people that this is what we need from them and this is what the vision is and this is how it's connected. How do we get them to feel that? And I think that's even more important in the current world of leadership, the way that people have reevaluated their lives.
And again, a lot of our audience, I'll say me and you in this podcast, are L&D people. So one of the cool things we did in one of our training programs, it happened to be, and I won't name it, but you could probably figure it out, a British automotive manufacturer.
Okay, not many of them left.
And this was a few years ago, but headquartered in Britain. For 3 hours, the 30 people in the training program went and took customer calls. That's kind of like that Wednesday afternoon activity. Yeah. Go get on the phone and by the way, they were joined with somebody who could solve the problem, but go listen to customer calls for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And come back and go, what did you learn? Holy smokes. Another example. Everybody says, get 40 hours of training. Big bank happened to be in the United States. Instead of 40 hours of training, these are your high potential leaders. We'd like you to do 3 hours a month of coaching of a not-for-profit. So pick a not-for-profit you believe in, whatever it is. It could be a shelter, it could be whatever. go offer to do about an hour a week of coaching of their leaders. Then come back and say, what did you learn about leadership that you could apply at the bank? To a person. By the way, first they doubled their time, the good ones. They said, we're not going to do 3 hours. That's 3 hours a month. That's 36 hours. They doubled their time. And they came back and said, I learned more about leadership by coaching the leaders of a not-for-profit. And it gave them, I love what you just said. They felt it. It wasn't academic. It wasn't an abstract case. They felt it. And they coached, and then they came back and had a 32-hour debrief. What did you hear that we could do within the bank? What did you hear that you can do? That's the kind of creativity that I see great L&D people doing. Maybe that's maybe that's certification level 8.
The next one. Well, you've talked about it a lot in the books you've written, in the videos that you've done about that outside in thinking. What does that outside world, what can it contribute? And sometimes when you're inside, you, as the old saying goes, you can't see the wood for the trees. But being able to just go out there, you can see on the top of my whiteboard just above my head this mindset, tool set, skill set piece. And this is, how do we get thinking differently before we start trying to create tools and trying to create skill sets for people? And that's exactly what you've just talked about, being able to go out and coach leaders and come back and say, what have we learned from that? How can we then deploy something similar to that? And then what are the things we need to learn and develop on to be able to deliver those things?
You know, it's really cool. And I'm trying to give specifics so that those listening say this isn't just abstract theory. A group who was doing 7-Eleven, and I don't remember what country, it was in Asia. They were going to do a leadership training program, the 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, it didn't matter. Before you came to the program, you had to go shop in 3 7-Elevens and observe your experience. And then the first part of the program was, what did you experience? What was it? And you couldn't say, I'm a senior vice president, so you're going to get really weird service. What was your experience in those 3 7-Elevens? And they said that became the case study and the foundation for their training program. How do we now build leadership skills so that when you walk into a 7-Eleven in Thailand or Taiwan or Singapore, you're going to have a better experience as a customer? I just, that logic for me is fascinating. And I find it intriguing. I love L&D because I think human capability, the people and the organization, the culture and leadership are the elements of success in today's market. We just did some research on public documents. In the United States, you have to file a public document right now with the Securities Exchange Commission on human capital. We found that companies that invested more in human capability had a much higher profitability. 5,700 companies. This is now not, you know, I visited 3 companies this week, right? I surveyed my LinkedIn friends. 5,700 companies using artificial intelligence methodology had a predictably higher performance. My dear friends in L&D and HR, step up. Step up.
I think one crucial bit that you've talked about there is I see for many decades that some teams have gone out and tried to engage with either their customers or their next in line customers or whatever it might be. But that reflection piece when you come back is not missed. So what have you learned from that? My very first job in training was working as a trainer in the NHS. And I would be, and part of that was on Windows systems, but part of it was clinical systems. I can remember vividly, it was about an hour-long session to train people how to use the system that was used in A&E, in accident and emergency. And, you know, you learn how to deliver the session, you know what the system does, you rattle through the session, brilliant. Until our manager said, why don't you go and spend an hour sitting in A&E? For the first time ever, not as like either a patient or a relative as a patient, and just observe what those people who are using that system, what they're dealing with, what they're going through, what the opportunities are to get to that system so you can bring it in. Well, that just revolutionized the way I approach that training.
Great idea. That is such a great case study, Rob, because that's exactly the issue. I coach leaders, and again, you do coaching. Pick a customer, follow your product or service with that customer. Who decided to buy it? Why did they pick you over their competitors? Go talk to them. When it showed up at the warehouse, if it's a product, go talk to the person at the dock on the warehouse. How did it show up on the truck? When it was put onto the shelf, how did you do? Salesperson, go walk your product. I'm not saying that very well, but I think you can get it. Go walk the experience with your product or service in a customer company.
Yeah.
And I love where you were before. You feel it. This is no longer an abstract survey. You feel it. And then what does that mean we need to do in our training and development? So
that moved me from, like, you know, basically stop complaining about all the things that get in the way of this system. It's pretty simple, just do it.
Yeah.
It moved me towards, oh my God, let's talk about the things that actually, you know, get in the way of you using this stuff, because I know it's a tough job that you guys have. And the primary reason, you know, my primary reason was in there was to help train these people on the systems so they could impact and affect patient care.
Absolutely.
But bang, there's the system. Their primary job isn't to use systems, it's to help people. And the systems are a contributor and an ingredient to that, but it's not as important to them as it is to me to get them to think it's important.
Totally agree. You know, right now there's a lot of discussion about where work is done. Are we in an office or are we at home? How is it done? Is it through technology or face to face? I think those are the wrong questions. I think over the next few months, we're going to see the question is not about where you work or how you work as much as why are you working? Start with why. Why are you working? To help a customer, patient get value. What are you doing to make that happen? You know, you could be in your home office. I'm in my home office. If people are watching this, you could be in your office. If we're creating value for a customer that is sustainable, I don't care as much where and how you work. And that's the issue. You know, it's hybrid so that it's resignation so that that's the stuff I hope we in L&D can keep our arms around. Now, then when you come to work, don't do work you could have done at home. Come together to be with people, to be together. Don't. But anyway, so that logic, Rob, just we can play sparklers or fireworks off of that basic premise, outside in, creating value. That's the world we live in today. And when L&D or HR can make that happen, we succeed. And business leaders, don't let your L&D and HR people get away with the program du jour. Get away, focus them on activities and outcomes, activities that will lead to outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it that's stopping you being able to perform and deliver towards the vision and the mission and the customer charter and all those things? How can I help that? And if I can't directly help, how can I help you find a way that will help you? I think it's absolutely crucial. So I guess, you know, if we come forward and kind of say, with all those things in mind and all the challenges, the hybrid working and the conversations and all those things that are happening, what if you could give kind of a kind of top tip or a final piece of advice to leaders out there, and then also the HR leaders, on how to start really moving towards the future and what we need? What would that be?
5 words: values defined by the receiver. Values defined by the receiver. Value is not what you know and do. It's what somebody gets because of what you know and do. I mean, that's, and by the way, that's true. I don't know if you're in a relationship. I've been married. My wife put her picture on this counter recently, so I can make sure it's there. When I give my wife a gift, who defines the gift? She does. She does. And values defined by the receiver. So I think in L&D, it's not what I know and do. It's how what I know and do helps you know and do what you need to do to succeed in your world, not mine. So that would be my tip.
I love that. And it reminds me actually of an activity I was doing the other day that, again, with a client that I was using the old 4-box grid of urgent and important. And, you know, so many times when that's used, it's what's urgent and important to me.
Yeah. Oh,
and I said,
really
before you put all those things in a box, create a list of all the things you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And I think tying into what you've said there, I'd said, can you articulate how every single one of those things has an impact towards why we're there in the first place, to the vision, to the mission, to the customers? And even though that might be important to you, if you can't articulate it, or you give yourself a score out of 10, I can 5 out of 10 see how that helps. You've got 2 things to do now. Is it just you that doesn't know how that connects? Because it isn't the right thing just to stop it. It might be really important. You just don't know. But if no one can find an answer as to why that contributes towards that endpoint, maybe that is in the not urgent and not important column, and we stop doing it.
I love it. I love it. I mean, instead of a 2x2, it's got a third dimension, me and other. So it's urgent, important, 2 dimensions, and then me and other. And if it doesn't provide value to someone else, why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? And I think L&D, we all get focused on where we spend our time and our energy, not the value we create for others. So that's my hope. It sounds like, Rob, you should be the poster child of this.
Put me on a poster, Dave.
I've been tempted to be on books, but every time I go to the publisher, they say, we'll make you the pre, and then we'll find someone else as the post. So you're the pre, and then there'll be somebody who reads this book and looks better than you. So
nice feedback.
Well, I was going through Passport once, and I have my passport somewhere here. They looked at my picture, and he looked up at me and he said, "It's not been a few good years for you." Nice. And I thought, welcome to the country. That's so nice.
That's it. Customs with a sense of humor.
Customs with a sense of humor, which was delightful. Thank you, Rob. Very good. I hope people enjoyed this session.
Oh, they absolutely will. And I guess, we're at that point now at the end of the conversation where I kind of like to look back and go, based on what we've talked about, Dave, what would be a good title for this episode of the show?
Well, you called it Leadership Entitled. I mean, you might want to put in the title Leadership Value Added, leadership that affects others, the value of leadership for others, something around that outside in logic.
I like that. I mean, there's a couple of things. I'd got that piece where you said the so that because of. I'd written down a value to your values. That's the value of values, the value of my values. I just posted something on that recently. I think that's a great title. That'll do. Super. That would be great. I love that. Dave, if people want to follow you, what's the best way for them to do so? I've written a lot of books, and I discovered a couple of years ago it takes me a year to write the book, a year to produce the book, and by then it's out of date. I post on LinkedIn every week. Yeah. And somebody wrote me a note this morning. She said, "You must have a great whatever LinkedIn." And I wrote back, "No, I respond. They're all my comments. I spend an hour or two a day just responding." It's become my I can't find the right word. You could help me with it. I called it a water cooler. It's the old metaphor, but it's a focus group. It's a discussion group that I love because it's global. And it's democracy. I don't care who the person is. I don't care what their title is. If they have a good idea and they're a student in Pakistan, phenomenal. If they're a student in Rhodesia, phenomenal. And so LinkedIn is the place where I post every Tuesday. And well, it's backing up what you said before, wasn't it? You're in amongst the people who are talking it and walking the walk, and you're learning from it. I am. And now there are some LinkedIn comments that are self-serving and obscene, but by the way, the wisdom of crowds over time, they get weeded out. So yeah, but that's where I'm finding LinkedIn is a great place to follow and make comments. Fantastic. I'll put your link to your profile on the show notes. And all that remains for me to say again, Dave, is thank you so much for agreeing to come along today. It's been a fantastic conversation, and one that's rippling with value for the listeners. So thank you. When you post it, let me know, and I'll have Macy. I have a social media helper who posts stuff. I'll have her post so we can get it out there to some access. So perfect. Great stuff. Good luck, Rob. You are terrific. By the way, where did the Donald Duck come from? So I've actually, I don't know if you can see just creeping over Donald's shoulder is Wile E. Coyote as well. And this is kind of the realism of people rather than probably going back to Stockdale, that these two are probably two of the unhappiest characters, you see. But Wiley never gives up, no matter how many of the setbacks. Okay. And Donald, whilst he's probably one of many people's favorite, he's also the grumpiest. But he still has a lot of fun. I love it. Have fun. You have a great spirit about you, and I feel better about myself from this interaction, which is my same here. So. Same here. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Well, that's it for this episode of the Leadership Untitled podcast. This episode is called The Value of Values. My thanks go out again to Dave Ulrich for coming along today and agreeing to come along today and having what was a fantastic chat, which I believe that loads of people will get lots of value from there. Please let me know what you take from it. Also, my thanks to you for listening and also for subscribing, following and supporting this podcast in every way that you do. Until next time, have a great day.